My name is actually Berenice Hammar. I was born Grill in Cape Town, but we lived in a place which is off the map today in the Western Cape called Vleermuis Klip. Vleermuis in Afrikaans is a bat, and there was a little koppie behind our house, and my father was known as the original Batman.
What year
Anyway,
was it? Where were you? What year?
1920 down, didn't I say? Okay, it was only 1 year. We lived in Cape Town eventually. My dad had a store, and after years we had two sisters and me. We were three girls. The eldest one has passed away. But my parents decided to leave after we were married, to leave Cape Town and go back to Salisbury, to Rhodesia. My father, as a young man, because his father had taken the family to Rhodesia, he had they thought it was blackwater fever when he was about 18, and they had to get him out of Rhodesia. They sent him to Cape Town to a cousin, and the cousin had a store in this Vleermuis Klip, and my father took it over. Anyway, we were now back in Rhodesia. Bertie and I got married in 1950. We'd been going out already for 4.5 years, and we left almost immediately for London, and we were there for nearly 6 years. He was studying surgery, and he got his fellowship, and we had 2 children there. When we went back to Africa, I would have stayed happily in England. I felt liberated. While we were growing up in Cape Town, I was at university, and teaching became part of my life. We used to go at night to the African townships and teach English to people who wanted to improve. I did university, but I was short of one subject. And in order to get my degree, when we got back from Europe to Africa, to Salisbury, the university in Cape Town said that if I could find a subject at the university in Salisbury that was similar in content to the Cape Town University course, I could do it there and get my degree, which I did. It was in anthropology, identical course to the Cape Town one. Anyway, there I was. In the meantime, I had always been bothered politically by the anti-black attitude around me, and a friend of mine and I decided to open a school for African students, because the education system for Africans was like a pyramid, like this. Almost everybody was allowed to go to primary school. Didn't happen, but they were supposed to be allowed. And then at the end of primary school, from the hundreds of thousands that started, there was a narrow gap like that only. So there was a definite need for extra education. So we decided to start. Chutzpah, I can't tell you. We went to, what's the name of the people that produced typewriters? Remington. Asked them for 21 typewriters on the Never Never plan. We'd pay when we could, and they said, okay. Then we had to have content, because we wanted to get them through the junior certificate, a 2-year course. How did we get the content for the subjects? Because the curriculum was laid down. We went to a correspondence school and asked them if they'd give us all their notes of the various subjects. Anyway, with that, plus raising money from the students who paid £3 a term, and the fundraising that we did, fashion shows and all sorts of things, we managed to keep running. We had to choose 41 students out of 1,000 that applied. It was a heartbreaking exercise because the parents were crying, please take my child, please take my child. Anyway, the interesting story is We called it Kufunda School. It was run by volunteer teachers from the Jewish community. We had one paid secretary, and she called me aside one day. Her husband worked for Shell, and she said to me, I want to tell you something. When I was growing up in England, I didn't know what a Jew was. She said, my father used to talk not nicely about them. And she said, I just want to thank you for letting me be with Jewish people to learn what they are like. So one convert.
Where was the school
The
located?
school was a coloured school that the then Smith government had removed the coloured students into the new coloured area outside of Salisbury. There was an empty school building with all the facilities. Eventually we managed to get the school. I and my friend ran it in the mornings, and in the afternoons a Catholic priest ran the same thing, but in the afternoon. Eventually somebody complained about so many teenaged Africans being in there. It was in the industrial era. You know where the copy was? In Salisbury? Okay, around there. They put us out. Father, I've forgotten his name now, Rogers and I went to see the minister to say, it's an empty building standing here. We're not interfering. The students have not made any trouble. He said, my dear, if common sense should prevail, but unfortunately not. And we were thrown out of there, all of us, him and me. I don't know where he went with his group at that time, but we went to the large Harare township where there was a hall where we met Frida, who trained groups of our children. We were in dressing rooms on the upstairs of the hall. Anyway.
Stoddard.
Sorry, the Stoddard Hall.
Hall.
Yes,
That's
it.
right.
Anyway, the Untersuchung was that it became very difficult because the volunteer teachers, we had to find out every day if it was safe to go into the township. There were riots. Some days it was not good. Eventually we decided it was not worth it. But this lasted about 7 years. And we managed to get one group taken into a functioning secondary school in the township. But that was that. But education and my involvement with the Jewish community was minimal. The only time when I was actively involved was when I taught for 2 years at Sharon School. I was on the Board of Governors as well, when your cousin was a president, or chairman. We had a chairman. I had a good time there because the teachers in primary school, to my experience, you should stand in front at the blackboard, dictate notes to the children, write them up on the board, and they had to sit and copy it. There was no real interaction. I decided not for me, and I collected, I can only call it a barrow load because it was actually a barrow that I filled with books, and I used to write out cards asking questions and telling the children which books they could find the answers in, but not page 1 to 5, they must look. And that's how I taught for 2 years at Sharon School. But when I left, the teachers didn't like the method. They went back to their old way. But that was my involvement. I did not work for Wheatzone, I did not work for UJW. I was busy teaching. First at the school that we created. Secondly, I went back to university and did a diploma in education, and then eventually was employed by the university as a lecturer in the education department, mainly training adults who had their expertise in various subjects but hadn't been taught how to put it across, how to teach, including the medical doctors. And I remember the one who resisted us violently was a psychiatrist. He did not want to be told how to put. Finally, I decided to leave. My children thought we were getting a divorce because Bertie was adamant he's not moving, and I kept saying, he won't let me go without him. And of course he came with me. And he was very happy here. Everything went well for him.
Here as in Israel.
Yeah. And
when did you come to Israel?
19, what year did, who said 70? When did you, no.
78.
No, we came I think in 77. I've been here 36 years or 37, something like that. I couldn't do any education here because Hebrew was not a subject that I could master. But I was a teacher. And I decided that the only thing I could teach was bridge, which I then pursued to this day. Oh, there's one little anecdote I want to tell about the family, if I've got time. My grandfather left Europe, Lithuania, leaving behind his wife, 4 grandchildren, and my granny pregnant with my father. They eventually had 11 children. And by the time he sent for my granny and the children, my father was 5. They got to Rhodesia, where my grandfather had settled, and I've forgotten the year, but when he was there 100 years, the family celebrated the 100th anniversary of his arrival in Rhodesia. And of the 160 possible direct descendants, 108 turned up, and we had it at the Victoria Falls. It
Fantastic.
was an incredible experience.
Fantastic.
Okay, that's it.